Hi, and welcome to another weekly report for the Neuropsychotherapist. My name is Matthew Darlitz, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Neuropsychotherapist, a magazine and website dedicated to the emerging field of neuropsychotherapy. To kick us off this week, I've written a small article, a primer really, on depression from a neuropsychotherapeutic point of view. And in this article, I've just outlined a number of major brain regions which are involved in depression, and what is actually happening in those brain regions in the depressed patient. Now, this report is for members only, so make sure that you log in if you're a subscriber, so that you can see that article. Now, I've also created a group in our Neuropsychotherapist Network page on depression. Depression being such a common ailment that I thought, well, it's worthy having its own group on our network. So if you're interested in talking about depression and sharing the things that you know about depressions as a clinician, then please join us on that group, and you'll find a link below this video. Now, while we're talking about the network, we have a thought-provoking answer to our latest big question, can empathy be taught, by Robert Moss. So thank you, Robert, for pitching in and giving us a thoughtful answer to that question. If you're interested in empathy and how empathy can be developed, then please join us on our Neuropsychotherapy Network page. And in our psychotherapy group, you'll find the discussion. I'll leave a link below this video so that you can go directly there. Now, as we have been doing regularly, we're going to hear from Dr. Dave and what's been happening in his world of shrink wrap radio. Thanks, Dr. Dave.
Thank you, Matthew. Once again, I really appreciate the opportunity to give your readers a bit of an update on the latest podcasts from Shrink Wrap Radio. And it's episode number 379, in which I interview my old and longtime friend Jerry Trumbull. This is actually the 21st time that I've had him on the show. He's really been kind of a collaborator in the background from the very beginning. And in this episode, number 379, we discuss marijuana, of all things. I call the episode the Great, what do I call it? The Great Colorado Cannabis Experiment. And I'm calling it that because while the federal government continues to make marijuana illegal in this country, the state of Colorado, has legalized it. And it's very much in flux there, but clearly the citizens of that state have voted, have expressed their will is to have cannabis be available to adults. And so we talk about the pros and cons of addiction, not the pros and cons so much, but whether or not marijuana should be considered addictive or not, physically, psychologically. And I think this is an issue that has great importance medically, psychologically, socially, politically. There are people in prison for so-called marijuana crimes. So we thought that it was worthy of our listenership and readership on Shrink Wrap Radio. So that's it for now. Back to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Dr. Dave. This week we've had a report about meditation slowing down Alzheimer's. So we're going to go across to Moscow now and hear from our news editor, Maria. Thanks, Maria.
Thanks, Matthew. Welcome to the Neuropsychotherapist. My name is Maria, and I'd like to give you a small introduction for my recent news item related to Alzheimer's disease. I chose this topic for the two main reasons: the high number of patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and the second one, which is related to certain limitations in the current treatment. There are currently no FDA-approved medications that could stop the progression of Alzheimer's disease. That is why I was quite excited to get to know about this recent study conducted by researchers at Beth Israel Medical Center. In this study, the main focus is given to mindfulness-based stress reduction, which appeared to help increase functional connectivity in the default mode network and also help to lessen atrophy of the hippocampus. Basically, those areas that are most affected by Alzheimer's disease. I guess that this study gives certain hope to individuals with few treatment options, as well as a bit of confidence to counselors and psychologists who utilize mindfulness and meditation in their practice. Let's look forward to future advanced research along these lines. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Now, if you're interested in following up this study, I'll leave a link below this video, a link to the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and you can follow up that study yourself. Now, it's always a pleasure to hear from Richard Hill in Sydney, Australia, and any interesting news that he's come across in the last week. So it's over to you, Richard. Thanks.
Hi there, Richard Hill from the Mind Science Institute with my little weekly update of what's been going on. Been a very interesting week in the research area, but we can't talk about everything. The ones that I've sort of particularly picked up is something talking about the hippocampus and passage of time, perception of time play in the hippocampus. Now that's quite interesting because our sense of time is mostly our circadian rhythms. It's mostly understood to be a striatal thing, the suprachiasmatic nucleus just sort of behind the eyes there, perceiving light and movement there. So we have other areas of the brain that are actually perceiving time movements, time shifts in time, our perception of its distance. And we certainly know with some of those areas of stroke, and particularly left side stroke, where people lose a sense of the time. We also do this ourselves when we're, sometimes time seems to travel very quickly, sometimes it seems to travel very slowly. Well, the hippocampus is inclined towards this. Now, this little article I noticed first in Scientific American Mind, or Scientific America, I think. The brain has two clocks. They don't actually give the people credit, which is naughty of them. It's the critical role of the hippocampus in memory for elapsed time in the Journal of Neuroscience 2013 in August. And what they're looking at is that the hippocampus has a very specific role. It doesn't look at the shifts in time in very short areas. It doesn't look at it in large areas, in very long areas, but somewhere in longish times, in medium times. What it does, it discriminates smaller but not larger temporal differences at slightly longer time frames. Now, this, so for example, with the mice that they were doing, we'll see how it relates to humans, the hippocampus didn't help in the 1 to 1.5 minute type of perception, but it did help in the 8 to 12 minute perception. So that sort of thing, if we're extrapolating it, perhaps it's that difference between an 8-minute shower and a 15-minute shower. That's the hippocampus comes in to help us know this and to remember. Remember, of course, the temporal area of the hippocampus in memory. So we remember the time difference. I just did some case study on a chap who actually had a bilateral thalamic, was a thrombosis, and so he'd lost that area there. And he had great difficulty with long periods of time, so he couldn't remember whether he was there for several weeks or several or months. But he was able to work with other areas of that medium time differences, and that was interesting. So hippocampus damage, striatal thalamus, suprachiasmatic nucleus damage. Interesting to keep an eye on that one. But the other one which was interesting was just to remind us that timing, not only time, but timing is terribly important. And progenitor cells, looking at the hippocampus where we mostly see stem cell activity going on, this nice work where what they looked at were these things called the quiescent neural progenitor cells. I'm reading that so I make a mistake. But they're actually producing clock proteins, what's called period 2, BMAL1, for those that are familiar, or PER2 or BMAL1. And these are giving some kind of timing to the cell work, to the molecular flow and molecular activity of the cell. So what they're interested in, and they make a nice little simple comment in their summary, where they just say that the model that they worked in the paper provides a foundation for understanding potential interactions between the circadian clock and the cell cycle throughout the body in these stem cell, in these reproductive areas and reconstruction and repair areas of cell work. So have a look at that. So hippocampus and time and timing. Very interesting. Now, let's get on, because I want to talk, we like to have a train come by. Very good. I love this outside stuff. 3 things that I want to tell you about in the what's coming up. A reminder again about the evolution of psychotherapy. That's December 11 to 15, and that's in Anaheim in California. Now, you can come for the whole conference, or you can just come for a day, which is really great. So it's a long time. I mean, I'm keen. I'm flying all the way over to America, so I want to get every minute of it. But just come for a day if you wish, or 2 days. So that's a fabulous thing. Now, just something that's almost over. I hope you even catch this. Finishes on December 1st. And that's an art display, an art exhibition. Mirrors of the Mind is the second one, and it's the Psychotherapist as Artist, and it's curated by a good friend of mine and a good friend of the Neuropsychotherapist, Terry Marks-Tarlow. She's one of the advisory board, and she's it's the second exhibition, December 1st, at Art Share in LA. That's at 801 East 4th Place in LA. And fabulous stuff. And in fact, if you go to thebookpatch.com, you'll find the book of the first exhibition. So really interesting stuff of looking, if you want to, particularly if you want to use with clients, images that really express the sort of work we do, the psychotherapy and how we're going. And finally, mindgains.org. That's GAINS, the Global Association of Interpersonal Neurobiology Studies. Our website's mindgains.org. Deborah Pierce-McCall, who's the president of GAINS, good friend of mine, she's doing an interview which will be presented over the web, and if you're a member, you can do this. It's worth becoming a member just to see this. And that's called Trinocular Vision, looking at the healing relationships between mind and brains, which is our triangle that we talk about in interpersonal neurobiology. Friday, December 13th, Easter American Pacific time of 10 a.m. So Friday, December 13th, Pacific time, 10 a.m. Tune into that. And it's a really good idea to have a think about joining GAINS, because if you join now in December, you actually get 2013 and 2014 membership. But you get Deborah's access to Deborah's talk, but you also get the journal. So you'll get 2013 and 2014 journal for the same price. I think we're about $100, not terribly expensive at all. That's all for now. I hope you have a wonderful week. Richard Hill from the Mind Science Institute and the neuropsychotherapist.com saying goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Richard. Well, that wraps it up for another week here at the Neuropsychotherapist. Please stay in touch with us on Facebook and Twitter and our own social network site. We'd love to hear your input on topics that we've been talking about and psychotherapy and mental health in general. So until next time, goodbye.